Hey guys, welcome back. Chances are if you're watching this video, you're planning on running a marathon or you've recently done one and it didn't quite go as expected. Stick around and I'll tell you about the simple way I went from hitting the wall to doing a 3:12 personal best at this year's Berlin Marathon. So, it's around 1 week to go until the Valencia Marathon, and I thought it might be useful for you if I share my nutrition plan, how I defined it, and maybe give you some tips so that you can nail your next race. You've probably heard of the term bonking or hitting the wall. Maybe you've even experienced this in a race, but didn't quite know what caused it. Simply put, it's your body shutting down as a result of not having enough fuel to carry on. So now that you know what it is, how do you actually go about avoiding hitting the wall? Now, the approach I want to share with you today has been oversimplified a little bit, and you can adjust to suit your needs, but it should be okay for most people to follow. So the first step here is actually knowing what your fueling requirements are. And without going into all the science in detail and getting overly technical, here are a few numbers to help you figure out what your needs are. So the average male burns about 0.85 calories per kilogram of body mass per kilometer run. So if we take me as the example, roughly 75 kilos times the 0.85 calories times the 42.2 kilometers gives me a fueling requirement of approximately 2,700 calories for the race. If you don't want to do it manually or you want to adjust some of the parameters in there, I'll put a link to a handy online calculator in the description and you can go and play around with that. So 2,700 calories is what I'll need for the marathon. Where will I get these from? Well, the average body has about 102,000 calories stored away in it. That's the good news. The bad news, however, is that around 100,000 of those are in the form of fat reserves. And these can typically only be accessed when you're doing lower intensity activity. A further 1,800 to 2,000 calories are stored in muscles and liver in the form of glycogen. And these are the ones that you'll typically be using most during a marathon. A quick little bit of maths there. I'm going to need 2,700. I've got between 1,800 and 2,000 in my body. That leaves somewhere in the region of 700 to 900 calories that I'll need to find from somewhere else to get me through that marathon. So now, moving on to step 2. Figuring out the fuel source I'm going to use for those extra calories. Now, here, there's no right or wrong, and only you will know what works best for you. I'll give you some tips and some things that you might want to try out, but this is really going to be somewhere where you are going to have to invest some time and money as part of your training in advance of your marathon or whatever race it is you're going to do to figure out what works best. For this, you can maybe use gels, or perhaps you prefer using an energy drink, or even energy bars, solids, or chewy sweets. The key is, for most people, you're going to want to have something made of simple sugars, as these are the things that your body is able to absorb the easiest. When you've got a few things to test, what you'll need to do on those long training runs is to try them out. Take the gels with you that you may be going to use during the race. Take your energy drink if you need to, a backpack with a Camelback or bars. And try them and see what works best for you. See what sits best in your stomach. See what gives you the energy that you feel you need. When you actually find what works for you, I would suggest sticking with that and then using it on all of your subsequent training sessions to fully get your body used to using it. Now, chances are the race you're going to be doing won't be using the same brand of gels or energy drink that you've been training with, unless you've specifically chosen them because you knew that it was going to be at the race. What you don't want to do is train with one thing, get your body used to that, and then on race day, use whatever it is that they give you because that will almost certainly be a recipe for disaster. So now we move on to step 3. Step 1, you worked out how much fuel you're going to need. Step 2, you've hopefully found a fuel source that you like: gels, bars, energy drinks. Step 3, working out the timing of consuming that during the race. So here's the final little bit of science. The average body can absorb 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour. That's roughly 240 to 360 calories. If we continue my example from before, I'm going to need around about 900 calories excess for the race, which is hopefully going to be about 3 and a little bit hours. So if I break that down per hour, I'm going to need to consume roughly 300 calories per hour. Now, there's no point in me consuming all of those calories in one go. My body won't be able to absorb them, and all of the excess is just going to be sat there in my stomach, which, from experience, doesn't usually end well. And in fact, it'll probably end up in a trip to the Portaloo. The best approach here is really little and often. Check out how many calories are in your gels, but it's probably going to be around the 100 mark. So the recommendation would be roughly every 20 to 30 minutes, one gel during the race. That gives your body enough time to absorb the calories and your stomach to empty out, ready for the next one. But again, the timing here is going to be individual, and it's something which you should practice during your training sessions and not just leave it to chance. Now, there are tools out there at the moment that can help you refine the timing. Last year, I was actually lucky enough to get hold of a few of the Super Sapiens glucose monitors from a race, and I thought I'd give them a try. And over the course of the couple of months that I had them, I was able to work out that roughly 25 minutes was the optimal interval between taking gels for my body. So, putting together all this information, what does my fueling plan look like for the upcoming marathon? Quick disclaimer here. The products I'm going to show you now that I use, these are from a company called Mountain Fuel. This is a small producer based in Keswick in the Lake District in the north of England. I've been using them for several years now, and I'm an ambassador for the brand. I don't receive any monetary compensation for this or for this video. I do get a discount on the products that I purchase from them though. But that said, there are plenty of other options out there for you. And going back to the points I've already made, you really need to try what works for you. I found these have been great for me, for my stomach. They sit really well. I've not had any issues with them. They have a pretty extensive range. These are actually their sport jellies. They have a few more carbs in them. They also have electrolytes in them, which I'll come on to in a minute. There's also a caffeine version and then a regular version without the caffeine. So my fueling on the day, this starts roughly 10 to 15 minutes before the race, when I'll take one of these caffeine gels to get me going. Caffeine is a well-known performance enhancer, but not everybody reacts in the same way to it. If you're gonna try out with caffeine, you should definitely do this again during your training sessions. Don't do it on race day, because the last thing you want is to ruin your race trying something that you've not used before. Then, after the race has begun, 25 minutes into it, I'll take one of these regular gels, and then another 25 minutes later, another gel. This typically coincides with the aid stations in the races, and at the same time, I then have a bit of water just to make sure that I'm staying hydrated. I'll then restart the cycle. 25 minutes later, a caffeine gel, followed by 2 regular gels, and then again, one more time through the cycle, caffeine gel, 2 regular gels, which then should take me up to the finish line. How does that fit in with the calorie needs? Well, each of these is roughly 100 calories or 30 grams of carbohydrates, which is then the 60 to 90. I prefer to go on the upper end of that range, but that gives me basically enough for the race. I did there mention electrolytes. These are very important because during the race, you're going to be sweating, and when you sweat, your body loses a lot of its salts. And these need to be replenished to avoid cramps. Now, the impact is typically worse in hotter conditions, but it's something which you'll need to think about. My gels do contain electrolytes, which take care of my needs, but if the fuel that you use doesn't have the salts in, then what you'll need to do is think about perhaps adding an extra salt supplement into your nutrition plan for the race. I won't go into any more details there. That's something else for another video. There you have it. To conclude, it's a fairly simple 3-step approach to helping you nail your nutrition plan for your next marathon and avoid the dreaded wall. First of all, work out how much fuel you're going to need. Secondly, work out where you're going to get the fuel from. And third, decide on the timing of taking the fuel. If you do those 3 things, you're already a long way on the road to securing that PB. Thanks for listening, and hopefully you found this information useful. If you did, please think about hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. And of course, if you've got any questions, drop them below and I'll get back to you with the answers. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.